NFL training camp is officially kicked off, which means the 2025 NFL season is underway. It's time to dust off those cobwebs and see which teams are going to be contenders and which are pretenders. We're continuing our NFL division preview and with the NFC West. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. What is up, folks? I'm one of your hosts here at the Degen Docs, and more importantly, I am joined by my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, a.k.a. Professor Locks. How we doing tonight, brother?
Well, it's 6 o'clock on a Sunday. It's the end of the weekend, so
not
doing too bad.
A couple.
There are better Sundays coming, in the near future.
Look, what are we talking about? Like 6-7 weeks? Maybe something like that. We're talking about we're right in the middle of the afternoon window. We're getting ready for the night game. I mean, this is.
You and I are going back and forth trying to figure out what our Sunday night bets are going to be.
Right? Who are we? What do we like? How do we go?
Exactly.
This is prime time. Come a couple weeks, so we'll enjoy a little bit of the calm, but make sure we get prepared for that time as we're doing our NFL division preview, folks. We kicked off the NFC North. We are now doing the NFC West betting guide, telling you all you need to know. If this is your first time joining us, first off, welcome. Thank you. The way this is going to work is we are going to be breaking down each team, talking about losses, additions, major takeaways, major concerns, fantasy football takes, and then look at the futures market and give out our best bets for each team. So you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned. Before we dive right into that, though, the Chargers have officially kicked off training camp. Rookies reported yesterday on the 12th. On the 16th, the whole team will report, and we'll really get some news and some action there. But yeah, next week, man, we are really already starting.
Yep.
And a little bit of news, not too much to get to. The legend himself, Ndamukong, went from sitting on people, grabbing quarterbacks, and now he's officially hanging it up. I thought he was already retired. Not gonna lie.
Honestly, when that popped across my ESPN feed, I was like, "Oh, I thought that happened a couple years ago."
Right?
I hadn't heard that name in a while.
I mean,
kind of a blast from the past kind of situation.
When's the last time he played? I'm gonna look it up. He was on the Eagles. What the?
Yeah, he was on the Eagles for a year or two.
Oh man, look at that! Like I'm with the Bucks. I remember him.
Yep, I remember the Bucks.
2022.
The Lions, I think maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, Lions, Dolphins, Rams, Bucks, and Eagles in 2022.
He was a journeyman towards the end of his season or his career.
Yeah. I mean, he was a pretty integral part of that 2019-2022 Bucks Super Bowl team. I remember that, but I guess he's hanging it up. But who knows? Maybe he'll start a rap career and come back.
That's right. That's true. Hey, and there's another guy that was also coming across my feed that's just starting his career that got himself in a little bit of trouble down there in
he's
Florida.
From Georgia?
Nope. He evidently, I don't know if he was caught in Florida. It happened in Florida, but Quinshon Judkins of the Cleveland Browns, the rookie star running back that they took in the second round, is being placed on like domestic violence charges.
So just another black mark for the Ohio State University.
Florida, he's a Brown. This is the Brown.
He's completely separate. He's now separate.
Browns will be the Browns. When things go up to the mistake on the lake, things just tend to happen.
All right. I'll let you dive into it being a Cleveland.
As an Ohio person, I mean, a guy from Ohio.
Okay, we'll see, man. I don't know what's going on in Columbus there, but maybe it's just a Cleveland situation. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, obviously, domestic violence, inexcusable. We don't know everything that happened. He was just kind of arrested and charged, so we're not really going to get into the moral implications of all that because it's kind of a little bit he said, she said. But obviously, terrible thing. And as far as what we're talking about for next season, Seems like the NFL is pretty slow to these things. I would be surprised if there's any type of suspensions.
Yeah.
I mean, Rashi Rice thing has been pushed on.
Yeah.
You know, we'll
But,
see.
you know, he is their RB1 at this point, I would say. You know, it's one of those things that
It could have some implications for sure. I don't know
not
if
not
the
great
teams
timing, but like you said, usually these things take a while to
right.
get figured out.
So I wouldn't, if you have him in fantasy or something like that, I wouldn't immediately jump ship. But obviously, something to keep an eye on there for Judkins, and hopefully they get that situation figured out. All right,
Yep.
let's talk about some more pleasant things, and that is the National Football League
Let's
returning.
do it.
Let's start this NFC West division preview with none other than the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals, who were 8-9 last year with a win total of 8.5, so right around that record.
Mhm.
As we always do, we're going to start with their losses and additions, talk about this roster turnover, get Derek's thoughts, and then we'll talk some takeaways here and really dive into this Cardinals team. So losses for this Cardinals team: Will Hernandez, free agent; Kaiser White, who was leading them in tackles the past couple years, he's now gone. Uh,
Yep.
Defensive ends for them, D linemen, guys that were contributors for the defense. That defense does kind of rotate a little bit, and then the kicker Mac Prater is also gone. They did bring in a changing of the guard there on that defensive line. Josh Sweat was the big free agent addition coming over from the Eagles. Calais
Mhm.
Dalvin Tomlinson, the rookie Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, and Mykal Walker there. And they brought over Akeem Davis from the Bengals, and then the rookie Will Johnson. They also have, Will Johnson coming from Michigan, and talking about the Ohio State, Denzel Burke. They also have
Yep.
him as well. So what are we thinking here? A lot of moving pieces, mostly on the defense. What are you thinking about this Cardinals team? What are your takeaways so far with all these offseason additions and moves?
Honestly, outside of Kaiser White, like you said, he was their or has been their leading tackler
Right.
the last few seasons. I like what they've done. I mean that's going to be a huge loss with White, but a guy in Mac Wilson that they brought in last year should kind of fill in his role. Akeem Davis Gaither should kind of fill in there, but up front, big time upgrades with Calais Campbell and Tomlinson and Walter Nolan coming in there, and then in the back end with Will Johnson, like you said, Denzel Burke. Defensively, they should be a lot better.
Yeah.
Offensively, still have a couple question marks. Just coming from me, I would have loved to see them bring in another wide receiver
Yep.
because
I
guys like
agree.
Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch just don't really excite me.
Nope.
But with hopefully some development with Maserati Marv, and then obviously we still have Trey McBride there in Arizona. We'll see how that offense shapes up.
Yeah, I mean, the offense you were talking about it there, it's going to look mostly the same. There's
Yeah.
really not a lot of changes to the offense. You're going to have Kyler, James Conner, you've got Trey Benson behind him.
Yep.
But really, it's going to be Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. The offensive line, still a little bit shaky. The tackles
For
looked
sure.
like they were set, but they both dealt with injuries last season. Both of
Yep.
them ended on the IR. Talking about one of those tackles in Jonah Williams, he had, they never said what the injury was, but he injured his right knee and was put on IR for his knee twice last season.
Right.
He initially missed 9 games, and then he missed the last 2 or 3 games. It was the same knee. There was no official diagnosis, but big boys,
Yep.
nagging knee injuries. We're talking about long-term health. The guy's been in the league a little while.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly when they were out of playoff contention, but it may have been something to that effect.
Right.
Something where he tried to come back probably a little bit sooner than he probably should have, and it was still nagging. Just decided to shut him down those last couple of weeks.
Right. I just have a little bit of pause when we're talking about
Yeah.
repeat injuries, especially on big offensive linemen.
Sure.
We're seeing this rear its ugly head with Tristan Wirfs over at
Yep.
Tampa Bay, which we'll talk about in a future episode there. But,
Yep.
Clearly it wasn't addressed. Hopefully it got addressed in the offseason. We will see. So something to keep an eye on there. Flipping over the defensive side of the ball, I agree. Their front seven, I think, without a doubt, got better with the guys they brought in, the guys they drafted. However, we're talking about this back end, and outside of Boot or Baker, there's a lot of unproven there. You've got Will Johnson, Jalen Thomas, Starling Thomas, Garrett Williams, and then Denzel Burke is buried there on the depth chart as of now.
Yep.
But there's some opportunity because they weren't really. It's not like they were excelling, but I don't know if I'm quite sold on the secondary. They're talking about cornerback from Michigan, Will Johnson, a guy who was projected to be a top 10, top 5 guy until he ran into some injury issues. Picked up a turf toe and a hamstring injury. Are you concerned with Will Johnson heading into this 2025 NFL season?
No, not really at all. I think it's a couple of injuries that are a real burden in season, but given that he's had a few months off to really rehab and get good and strong prepped for the season, I think he should be good come training camp, through the preseason, and then week 1 as well. Going back to your point as far as the secondary, Denzel Burke, this past couple seasons, he's been kind of hot and cold at times, but going back to his freshman year, even sophomore year, he was looked at a guy that could potentially be a first round guy as well. So interesting to see how he potentially climbs up that depth chart to help that definitely needy secondary.
Yeah, no, I right. There is potential there. I think that's kind of the key word of the secondary. Will Johnson might be one of the steals of the draft. Because I think injuries
kind
of
big surprised that he slipped into the second round to begin with.
I was as well. We kind of understand injuries a little bit better than most, but turf toe, even in the worst case, 4 to 6 months. Hamstring injury, even in the worst case, other than a completely torn hamstring, which we would have known, 4 to 6 week realm. I mean, we're now talking, 6+ months and things like that from when these would have occurred. So, like you said, really, he should be good to go. Now, again, injury history is a predictor for future injury. Number one, predictor for injury is a previous injury to that body part.
Yep.
But for these specific injuries, they're not concerning. Maybe the fact that they've happened, back to back. But I think we talked about it in one of our earlier episodes. Likely he was trying to prep for the combine and the draft and work through an injury. Probably came back a little bit too soon. Or now he has that longer kind of break there. So, yeah, I'm not concerned. And I think, they do have a lot of potential there. It's just interesting to see. So let's see how this rubber is going to meet the road here. Let's first talk fantasy football before we get into the betting side of things. What kind of takeaways do you have from this team, obviously on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, a guy that I absolutely love later in the rounds is James Conner. James Conner is Mr. Consistency when it comes to just production as a whole. He's going to get the majority of the carries, and he's a touchdown machine when it comes down to it. He has really, hasn't been that guy that will pop off for 30 points or whatever very often, but he's just a steady guy that is going to get you 10, 12 points a week.
Yeah, no, we definitely like to target these guys that aren't sexy because they've been in the league for a little while, but they're just productive. I mean, 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 7 and 8 touchdowns on the ground, respectively. I really appreciate that he had a little uptick in his receiving game. I mean, he had 400 receiving yards with almost 50 receptions. That was a nice kind of boost to see there. So he's definitely capable out of the backfield. Definitely James Conner, a guy that, never really at ADP because he's not a sexy name. Again, I think he's always a little bit undervalued. And then I'll just talk about Trey McBride. I mean, look, we've talked about, if you want to go deep into the fantasy, we did our fantasy rankings. He came in as our tight end number 2 for a reason. I mean, I think him and Bowers are just in a separate tier. They have the ability to, really get into that wide receiver 1 realm.
And honestly, he could be tight end 1 if he found the end zone occasionally. I think the last couple of years, he's only found the end zone like 3 or 4 times. If he was able to find, a touchdown every couple of weeks, he would climb up real fast.
Right. And which, that the game plan is that, just it is what it is. I know he's been tackled at the 1 a couple of times. It's kind of one of those a little bit anomalies, but we do have almost 3 years of data showing like he doesn't really get in the end zone. So, but definitely a guy, hey, one of the premium kind of tier 1 tight ends. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about this betting space here. So we've got win total 8.5, a little bit of juice to the over. You can find it -110. It's kind of floating around again. We've kind of went across a couple different books here because there are some variability. So depending on
Yep.
how you like it, you want to play. But make playoffs anywhere from plus 125 to plus 130. Miss playoffs more minus 150, minus 160. To win the NFC West, anywhere from plus 420 to plus 475. To win the NFC, anywhere from plus 21 to 1 or 28 to 1. And then the Super Bowl, very variable, 46 to 1 all the way up to 60 to 1 over on DraftKings.
Yep.
Are you touching anything win total futures wise for this Arizona Cardinals team?
Yeah, so win total is something that I like with the Cardinals. I'm taking the over 8.5 wins at my 110 is what I got it at. So
Yep.
I do think that the Cardinals kind of faded down the stretch last year, and
Yep.
I was looking over their upcoming schedule. I think they're gonna get off to a pretty hot start, to be honest with you, and I'll talk about that here in one of my other bets. But I think it's just one of those things. The defense should be better. Offense is fairly consistent, and just within the division itself, I think a couple teams may not be as strong as they were last year.
Yeah. For this, for me, I've only got one bet on them, and it is not kind of total related. It's a little more player side. They were a tough team for me to figure out. Like I could see them going 8-9 again. I could see them going 9-8. I could see them going 10-7. 7-10. They're
Mhm.
kind of a middling team that the offense is going to look the same. I think I'm a little bit what's the word? A little salty from last year, a little bit
Yeah.
hesitant because I got burned by Kyler last season. Because he just looks so good some weeks, other weeks, man, he just lays an egg. So it's a little bit hard to trust him in a full season's length. We thought it was a Cliff Kingsbury thing, but it might be a Kyler thing. But I definitely don't hate to play there. I mean, I like we talked about, the defense should be better, and it really wasn't that bad of a unit last year. They should have upgraded that. And then
Yep.
the offense, it's just all right. Are Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison going to be able to take a step forward and kind of be even better weapons there? So I do like that. You got anything else in this round before we move on to the player stuff?
I do. I have a few bets to throw out there. You talked about Kyler and how he kind of led you astray down the stretch last year. I like Kyler to go over 3,500 passing yards at plus 100. The only seasons he's played in the NFL, 6 seasons now, the only two that he hasn't hit this is when he got injured. So he played 11 games back in 2022 towards ACL, and then came back for the second half of the season of 2023. Only played 8 games.
Right.
Those years he didn't hit this. The other 4, he's hit this pretty easily. So last year he threw for 3,850 yards. Going back earlier in his career, his lowest total was 37.22 in his rookie season.
Yeah.
So I like Kyler to go over 3,500 yards, assuming that he stays healthy, obviously. But outside of him, I'm a big fan of the Cardinals to take a little bit of an extra step. I don't know if they'll make any noise, but I do think that they will get to the playoffs this year. So I
Okay.
took them to make the playoffs at plus 130. And I
Nice.
mentioned earlier that I think part of the reason why I'm a little higher on the Cardinals is because I think they'll get off to a hot start. So I took them to get 4 wins out of the first 5 games. So
Oh,
four wins by week 5 or after week 5 at plus 280.
is that
So
for like? Is that exactly four?
exactly 4. Yes.
Okay. All
Yes.
right.
So their first 5 games is at New Orleans. I
Right.
think that's a win with Tyler Shuck being a rookie quarterback.
I agree.
Carolina's coming to Arizona. I think that's a win.
Yep.
Carolina's done some good things in the offseason, but they're still building.
Right.
At Cisco's going to be a tough one.
Right.
They have Seattle coming to their building. They've had massive turnover this
Right.
past offseason.
We'll
And
talk
then
about
they
that.
have Tennessee at home
Yeah.
with another rookie quarterback.
Yeah. They got
So
a nice schedule. Wow.
they have a nice, first 5 weeks. The back half obviously will get a little bit tougher, but they
Yeah.
have a third place schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do really like their first 5 games. Obviously, San Francisco or at San Fran, we'll see how San Francisco is after a down year last year. And then Seattle being in division at home, it's still an in-division game coming back from San Francisco. But I think those are the two that I was kind of wishy-washy, and I said, yep, I think they'll get one of them.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. I mean, their schedule really opens up well. They even, after Tennessee comes to town, they go to Indianapolis for who knows what that call team is going to be. Is going to be, one Arn Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So that's a really nice start to the schedule. So I like that play there. 4 wins in the first 5 weeks. Nice juicy price of plus 280 there. My one play for this team is Marvin Harrison Jr. over 6.5 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
Even money over on ESPN Bet. Plus 100 there over on ESPN Bet. Most of the other books have that as a little bit of juice there. So definitely want to snag that before that number moves. When we talk about the classic, Trey McBride, where are your touchdowns going? It's to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I mean, he had 8 touchdowns as a rookie. He led the team in receiving touchdowns.
Yep.
And he tied James Conner to lead the team in rushing and receiving touchdowns. So he's a big body wide receiver. His separation maybe not his thing. He's not going to burn you, but he can go up and get the ball, and he can make contested catches. I mean, that's what he did at Ohio State, and that's what he did in the league as a rookie. No reason for him to be, get worse there. Obviously, Kyler trusts him to be able to throw him those balls. I mean, again, 8 in his rookie year. Even if McBride takes a couple, whatever. Like when we talk about the passing game, it's Maserati Marv and Trey McBride. That's really it. Michael Wilson or Dortch, whatever. But I don't think they're going to really be taking away touchdowns. So I think this number is a bit low for Marvin Harrison. Again, we only have the 1 year of sample size. But he did it in college, and he just showed, in the NFL, the dude can make contested catches and find the end zone. So, give me Marvin Harrison Jr. over 6.5 receiving touchdowns at even money there.
I like it.
All right, we are going to move on to our next team. But before we do that, I got to tell you folks about one of our great sponsors here at IDP Plus Bets. And that is Bob Lung's, Mr. Bob Lung's Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Yes, for all you fantasy football heads, make sure you subscribe to the IDP Plus channel, where it's a lot more heavy fantasy focus. But also, you want to make sure you get you a copy of Mr. Lung's Consistency Guide here. Get a look up on your opponents with Bob's 10th annual edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for 2025. Purchase yours for a measly $15 on Amazon. Just search 2025 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Look, folks, it's not one of those sequels that they just keep making and you're like, like Fast and Furious 25. Why are we doing this? People actually like this, and that's why it's continued to be a 10th edition. So get yours today. Definitely one of the staples to help you prepare for fantasy football season. All right, we are now going to move on to the Seattle Seahawks. That is right, the Seattle Seahawks, who came in at 10-7, tied there with the win-loss record for the division lead. Just kind of did not win the division due to some tiebreaker situations. But Seattle Seahawks team that looks not a little different, a lot different on the offensive side of the ball. So let's dive right into these Seattle Seahawks. We're going to talk these roster changes of this offseason there. Good shot of Lumen Field, which is a very nice stadium. Was able to go see them lose to the Steelers. I don't think it was last year. I think it was 2 years ago. But man, that was it did get loud. But I'll be honest, maybe it's because the Steelers fans travel so well. But I was a little underwhelmed by the volume. But the stadium is definitely one you got to put on your list there as a football fan. But we get into these losses and additions here. Obviously, Geno Smith, the big quarterback change. Geno's now in Las Vegas, and we bring in Sam Darnold over from Minnesota. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, guys who were staples of this team for the past several years, now gone, moved on. Lockett with the Titans, DK Metcalf taking over for the George Pickens role in Pittsburgh. Some changing on the offensive line. They are losing Fant and Tomlinson, and a couple changes in the secondary and defensive line there. But really, it's Geno, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, the big three that kind of changes out. And with those changes, we bring in Mr. Sam Darnold coming off a, 14-3 year or something like that for the Minnesota Vikings. You got Jalen Milroe of the University of Alabama. Cooper Kupp moving on from Los Angeles, MVS. They got the rookie, a tight end, Elijah Arroyo coming out of Miami. The rookie out of North Dakota State, Zabril on the offensive line. big offseason addition was probably DeMarcus Lawrence there, probably the one that got paid the most. They bring back Shaq Griffin and take the rookie out of South Carolina, Amon Worry, rated out as the second best safety in the class. So a decent amount of changes here. Really kind of they brought in a lot, but they lost their core part of their offense for the past several years. So what is your take on this? What are our takeaways from this Seattle Seahawks offseason?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this offense looks like. Will Sam Darnold be the guy that we saw for the majority of the season last year, or will we see the Sam Darnold that we've seen for the majority of Sam Darnold's career? And you lose a couple stud wide receivers in Lockett and Metcalf. You bring in an aging Cooper Kupp. He definitely didn't have the same production last year as we're used to seeing.
Right.
But you bring in a little bit of help with Gray Zabel out of the draft, lose Laken Tomlinson. But I think it was right tackle was kind of a revolving door for them last year, just injury wise.
Yep.
Left tackle, you have Charles Cross, who's pretty much a staple. He's one of the better tackles in the league.
Yep.
But will this be a Kenneth Walker the third team? Is it going to be Sam Darnold's team? It'll be interesting to see, how offense actually moves the ball if they can.
I mean, this is a lot of changes for a team that has a young coach in Mike McDonald there. Just his second year on the job.
It's kind of funny because, I mean, he's a defensive guy. All the defensive guys are back. I mean, their defense is pretty solid, but
yeah, the offense is it's gonna be who's gonna be able to step up and help this out. And like you said, the Sam Darnold question is probably the biggest question, right? He impressed us all. He definitely. I know he shocked me. I'm gonna say the general public. Like, I mean, how much of that was the quarterback whisper of Kevin O'Connell?
Right.
I just feel like we'll get more into how I think the team's going to be, but I think we have a lot more data on him looking one way than another way. This offensive line, I know it's a little bit shifted around, but they gave up a lot of pressure last year, and Geno was under duress. That is not a recipe for success with Sam Darnold, as we saw late in the season and for most of his career. Not someone who handles the pressure extremely well. So we'll see. I mean, having him play outdoors up in Lumen Field, that's not the friendliest quarterback condition. So it's going to be an interesting, team, definitely on the offense. Defensive wise, they're a decently solid defense, and they look like they're going to have another solid defense. Really, didn't lose a ton and bring back some guys there. So it'll be an interesting spot here. Talking injury wise, we'll get the easy one out of the way. Ernest Jones, the fourth there, inside linebacker. He had an offseason knee scope to fix a nagging knee injury. Like you're going to hear us say a lot. That kind of can happen. If you got something minor, they'll get a minor procedure, and most of those guys are back by training camp. So just someone to keep an eye on because he is an important part of that defense there. But Kenneth Walker, you kind of mentioned it. I mean, past several seasons dealing with these oblique injuries, which, refers to anything abdominal or inner thigh there, inner hip, kind of an umbrella term. Also dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury. He ended the season on IR for his ankle, and he's dealing with this. I don't know if it's the same injury, but on the same ankle, he had a minor ankle injury in this offseason. So not exactly what you want to hear for a guy who's struggled to stay healthy throughout his career. What are your thoughts on, Kenneth Walker coming into this 2025 season?
Yeah, man, I like Kenneth Walker. I really do as a player, but the dude just hasn't been able to stay on the field the last year or two, and it's just one of those things. Like we always say, the likelihood of future injury on something that has already been injured is super high, and it's just one of those things that as the injuries kind of continue to pile up for Kenneth Walker, will he be able to be that workhorse of a back that we're all hoping for? Or is this going to be a Zach Charbonnet moment to try to, take full control over that RB1 spot?
Yeah. I mean, the oblique thing kind of scares me because we're talking now multiple years of a similar thing popping back up during the season, right? So clearly something, whether it's play style or something's going on where that part of his body is just not responding well to action. And then, the ankle typically wouldn't be a big deal for me, but he ended the season on IR with the same ankle. We don't know if it's the exact same injury. Again, they're kind of keeping that close to the vest because they can right now. But just not what you want to hear. Just not the vibes.
Sure.
Not really good vibes. Now, I don't want to blow it out of proportion and say I'm absolutely fading Kenneth Walker, because I don't think that's the case. He's got the capability. But I don't know. I will say I'm not trusting him either to kind of be on my fantasy team.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like, leading into kind of our fantasy takeaways for the Seattle Seahawks, like, if you're going to be a Kenneth Walker owner, you may want to have a good third option, second option for him at least, because the likelihood of him playing all 17 games is probably pretty low at this point.
He hasn't done it. Yeah, he hasn't
exactly.
done it.
Yeah. So you better have a good second option for him, not even just a second wide receiver or second running back.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. And then I think the other guy where we get to these fantasy takeaways is JSN. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Another Ohio State product. I was high on him last year.
Wide receiver,
he helped me out a lot in fantasy in that second year stepping up. I mean, he was clearly their wide receiver one if we look at the numbers there. How's he going to look? Is this coming off there where now the cat's out of the bag? I mean, he is going to be the main guy in that offense. We talk about wide receivers. I know they're going to move him around, try to get him in the slot and create matchups, but he's coming in with Sam Darnold. It's a new quarterback. What are we thinking, JSN? Do you think he picks up where he left off? Do you think there's a little bit of growing pains in this offense, having expectations? What about JSN? Are you ready to kind of ride that train again this year, or you got a little pause?
I would ride that train, to be honest with you. And obviously the only hesitation that I have is coming from a new quarterback in Sam Darnold. Are we going to see the guy that was throwing the rock all over the place to Justin Jefferson and Addison last year? Or are we going to get a pumpkin? But I think from a JSN standpoint, you still brought in a guy in Cooper Kupp, and you still have to, provide some extra help defensively for a guy like Cooper Kupp. So I don't think it's going to be one of those things that they don't have anybody else at wide receiver where the defense is solely making sure that they know, where number, whatever number he is, 9, I think it is. He's a single digit guy, but anyways, where he is, I know Walker's 9. I can't remember. It is,
he's 11. He's
11. There we go. So I think it's one of those things that they brought in some help for JSN from just defensive perspective.
Yeah, I mean, no, I agree with you. I'm his ADP. You're gonna have to pay more for him this year, obviously.
Sure.
But he's definitely someone that I think is going to be successful. We'll get into it.
When we did our fantasy rankings, we had him in our top 15 still. It's not like...
he's a great player. And we're kind of bearing the lead a little bit, but I don't expect this to be a really good team. So I think they're going to be having to throw the ball a lot and be in situations where, they're playing from behind. It's at least my take. So I think you're a little bit protected by, hey, he might not have the best quarterback situation, and I get that, but I do think he's going to have plenty of opportunities just being the guy in that offense, then moving him around and kind of showing last year that he can handle that volume, and especially in a PPR league, I think he's someone who can be very valuable. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the betting side now. The Seahawks coming off a 10-7 season. They have a win total around 7.5, 8.5, depending on what your juice you're looking for, what your flavor is. 7.5, obviously juice to the over. 8.5, getting a little bit of a plus money on the over there. So it kind of just depends on what your expectations are for this team. Looking at the futures market, they're plus 180, plus 170 to make the playoffs. Missed playoffs anywhere from minus 195 to minus 225. Division price, as good as plus 550 over on FanDuel. NFC as good as 35 to 1 to win the NFC on ESPN. Big variability there. And then Super Bowl, between 55 and 60 to 1 is what I was seeing there across the books. So let's start there, brother. You got anything win total future-wise for this team?
Yeah, you mentioned it. I'm not expecting the Seahawks to have as good of a year as they did last year. I think they're going to do a few games that they ended up winning last year. So I took the under at 8.5 wins at -140. Gives me a little bit of extra protection. I think they'll be around 500. I think they'll be just shy of it. So I went ahead and took the under 8.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar. I just went a little bit more. So I took the under 7.5 at +140 over on DraftKings.
Yep.
You know, I don't trust Sam Darnold.
Yep.
I understand he had a great year and it got himself paid, and maybe he's turning his career around. I just think we
Sure.
have a lot more data to show that he's not a very good NFL quarterback.
Yep.
I think he had a very perfect situation in Minnesota, and I think we
Mhm.
saw what happened when people started to figure out the game, right? To kind
Yep.
of figure out,
Yep.
oh, this is how we can really affect him. I mean, I think back to that Detroit Minnesota game. I mean, they had so many opportunities to kind of win that game, and it was all really down to Sam Darnold. He just could
Yep.
not execute, and then you
Sure.
saw it in the playoff next week. So that is the last picture we saw of him. I think that's going to do something to his psyche, despite having such a good year.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about it in a little bit. Kenneth Walker, we got concerns there, and really the guys that they brought in on offense. I am not someone who thinks Cooper Cup. Like, I think his best days are well behind him. MVS in the same accord. Noah Fant, okay. Like, nobody outside of really JSN is somebody I'm excited about in this offense, who I think
Sure.
is going to consistently produce. And I just don't think that's enough when you have a maybe decent offensive line. You've got a couple rookies that are going to be starting and a lot of unproven there
Yep.
outside of Charles Cross, and Abraham Lucas has been around for a while, but I'm just really, I think the team could be competent because of their defense, but I don't think their
Mhm.
defense is dominant enough to really convert those into wins. So I think they're going to struggle. Honestly, they're my least favorite team in this division, which we'll get to. So I think that ultimately they're going to go under 7.5 wins there.
Yep. I like it.
You got any player stuff for us?
Yeah, talking Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think he's going to go over 1,000 yards, and it's at even money. So grab it while you can. I think that's definitely underpriced right now. So yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba to go over 1,000 yards yet again at
Like
even
it.
money.
Yeah, like it. Do you have anything else for the Seahawks before I give out my last one?
Yeah, I'll give out mine. I was in this 5-week thing, and I kind of got hooked on the I think it was the drive to week 5 kind of a thing. So I got to
Okay.
looking at the Seahawks schedule of their first 5 games, and they start off with San Francisco at home. Then they travel to Pittsburgh, loss. They have New Orleans coming to Seattle. Those are I'm a Steelers fan, but they bring New Orleans to Seattle. Then they go to Arizona, and then they finish week 5 with Tampa Bay
Okay. So
coming
what are
to
your 2
Seattle.
wins? New Orleans.
I think they win 2 of those. You
Okay.
know, they have 3 of the 5 at home. One
Right.
is in division potential there.
Right.
Tampa Bay definitely high on Tampa Bay potential. Win come week 5, but I
It's
think
far road trip.
New Orleans is a done deal. That's probably the lock of the 5, and I think they will end up with another win in
Right.
those 4 weeks. It'll just come somewhere as long
Yeah.
as it doesn't come at Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I mean, look, yeah, like you said, they're competent enough, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna, completely bottom out. But yeah, I think that's fair. Where's that at over on DraftKings? You're getting those?
That's at DraftKings,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
The
don't
2
hate
wins
it.
plus 215. Got a little extra juice on my side there, but yeah, I think New Orleans they get a dub there, and then they'll find another one.
You're gonna be really pissed these first 5 weeks. I mean, why wouldn't we?
Right.
But
You're gonna be locked in.
you're gonna have a lot going on there. So, all right, my final play for the Seahawks, other than their under on their win total there, is give me Zach Charbonnet over 475.5 rushing yards at -110
Okay.
over on
So you're
DraftKings.
not a Kenneth Walker believer.
Um,
He's
you
not
know,
staying healthy.
I think that they understand that one. Zach Charbonnet is a good enough running back that he
Yeah,
deserves some care regardless.
sure.
So I don't think this is going to completely dependent on Walker, bottoming out or having a major injury. I mean, even in his rookie season where Walker just missed 2 games, he still
Yep.
had 462 yards. So
Yep.
he was, 10 yards away from that number,
Sure.
50 away. Last season, he had 579 yards. He's averaging over 4 yards a rush. He had 8 touchdowns last year. Like,
Yeah.
I think he's just proved that he's a good enough back to be involved.
Sure.
If the Seahawks are smart, I don't think they have Sam Darnold throw the ball a ton. I think they take a little bit more of we have a decent defense. Let's run the
At least
ball a
while they
little bit
can.
more.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, while you can. Like, I think that it's just a low number for a pretty capable back. And then,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. Kenneth Walker has injury concerns. That's not really a secret at this point. So,
No doubt.
I like this bet because I don't think it relies solely on Kenneth Walker getting injured.
Yeah.
But obviously that's factored into the fact that, yeah, there's a chance, he's going to miss at least a couple games and
Yeah.
Charbonnet is going to be the guy.
Sure.
So give me Charbonnet there. I think it's a low number for a pretty damn good back. And if they're smart, I think they go to a little bit of a 2-back system and really kind of rely on that running game. So that is the play there for the Seattle Seahawks. All right, we are going to move on here. But before we do that, I got to tell you guys about what we got going on here at idpplus.com. First off, head on over, check out, because I know you're going to like the page. We've got articles. We've got subscribers only content. We have a subscribers only Discord. There's different tiers, different levels, especially if you like defensive fantasy IDP. If you're one of those few elite members, almost, the few, the proud, the IDP, to rip off some of my Marines brothers there. Head on over to idpplus.com. We're dedicated to football, 365, 24/7. That's what we do. A little bit more fantasy stuff over on the IDP Plus, YouTube and things like that. But idpplus.com is where you get everything. Bets, fantasy, anything you can want about football, we've got it. So go ahead and check that out. Again, that is idpplus.com. All right. And I got to stop saying all right. I keep saying all right. Give me another transition word. Furthermore, moving along, let's talk about the third here. We were talking about the Los Angeles Rams, the NFC West defending champions. I'm emphasizing because somebody was not as high as these Rams as I was last year, gave that out, and when they were a plus 330 beginning last year. We won't get into any of that. Let's not get too far in the rearview mirror. But these Los Angeles Rams, who were, in my opinion, one play away from knocking off the unfortunate Super Bowl champions of the Philadelphia Eagles. Sean McVay just runs the damn ball on 3rd and 1 instead of waiting for that. But whatever. Anyway, Los Angeles Rams, a fun team. 10-7 last year. With a win total of 9.5 there. Kind of expecting around the same expectations. A lot of change here. This is a team that had probably the least amount of draft picks. So as far as the additions are going to be less than the subtractions there. But let's kind of dive right into all this shakeup. We just talked about Cooper Kupp. They really let 2 wide receivers go to division rivals.
Yeah.
In Kupp and Demarcus Robinson, who's going to the 49ers, which I guess tells you something how they feel. So watch out for the revenge games there. Offensive line got shaken up a little bit. Jonah Jackson going to the Bears. Note Boom going to the Ravens. Lost some on the defensive line. Really some kind of rotational pieces. And same with Rose Boom there. Nobody I'm really concerned with on the defense there. The O-line and wide receivers are a different story.
Sure.
And then who do they add? I mean, the big name is Devonta Adams.
No doubt.
Obviously, he's the big free agent addition. They did bring in DJ Humphries fairly recently. We'll talk about why, but left tackle Larry Jackson dealing with a fairly significant illness right now. They added Coleman Shelton out of the draft. They picked up Poona Ford. Their highest draft pick in the second round was the tight end Terrace Ferguson, who could have some potential there. And then Josiah Stewart coming from Michigan. So, a lot more lost than gained. But again, this was a team that made it to the second round of the playoffs. We're at least pretty close, probably the closest team to play those Eagles in the playoffs as far as beating them. So where are you at with this, offseason, how they did? What are your takeaways for their free agency?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to say about the Rams. I think the obvious move was Cooper Kupp. bringing in Davante Adams.
Right.
It lost a couple offensive linemen, but I think only one of them was starting. I think Noteboom was their starting center, but you replace him with Coleman Shelton.
Right.
Other than that, yes, they had a few pieces leave, but they brought in a few pieces to basically fill them directly. So,
Yeah.
Not a ton of a change, just everybody's a year older.
Yeah, almost zero, which everybody being a year older, the Stafford question, right? I mean, I think that they do have an elite top 3 offensive weapons. Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, who we'll get to, and Devonta Adams. I think that is among the best in the division. But can Stafford stay healthy? He is, getting up there in his 30s, almost looking to 40
He's
there.
37, I believe.
37. Yeah, he's had the elbow thing pop up a couple times.
Yep.
That's a situation that could really make this team, wheels fall off. Who is their backup quarterback, actually? Jimmy G?
Jimmy G.
Jimmy G. Okay. All right. I guess not the worst you could do, but definitely not someone who I'd be excited about. But anyway,
Definitely.
so yeah, I do think their defense is young and promising, though. I mean, they definitely were a team that you could run for 200 yards on them pretty easily, and I think the Eagles still did. But as it developed and got these young guys with some experience, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, Kitchens in the back end there.
Yep.
They really started round out to be a good unit. So I think there's some potential. Can they kind of bring that momentum going forward?
Sure.
But as far as the Stafford situation, I think that's the biggest kind of question of what this team's going to look like.
Yep.
Any thoughts on Stafford? Is this a situation where you've kind of one way or the other, or we'll see?
Honestly, my opinion hasn't changed a ton from last year. Not necessarily because they had, they made it to the NFC Championship game, but or not the championship game, division, whatever that was.
Divisional round.
Divisional round. But I think it's just one of those things over the last couple of seasons, and this did happen. It just happened really early in the season. They just have had injuries left and right on the offensive line with Stafford. Nacua was out for 3 or 4 weeks last year. Will the Rams be able to stay healthy? And last year, back half of the season, they were very healthy. They started playing really good ball, and that defense, like you said, kind of shaped into a pretty good unit. But I just have some hesitancies as far as health goes, as far as a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford, a 32-year-old Davante Adams. He took a little bit of a step back last year. So,
yeah,
I have my questions.
Completely fair. Another season looks like we're going to disagree, but that's what makes for good TV. I want to say, but good entertainment there. But yeah, let's talk about. We were talking about the offensive line. You're talking injuries. They really got one major, and it's more of an illness than an injury. Left tackle Alaric Jackson. They're really kind of relying on some guys that were forced into action last year. And Alaric Jackson was one of those. He's dealing with blood clots right now. Obviously, something that can be very serious, from my NBA fans. Victor Wembanyama, Wemby just had this. This is something that is not a, no joke. It can be fatal, can be a deadly situation, so must be taken seriously. He also had this issue back in 2022. That's scary from a medical perspective, that this is kind of a, now I don't want to say recurrent, but at least has happened in the past. So there's no timeline on his return, as there shouldn't be with something like this. So, that's kind of why they brought in DJ Humphries as a little bit of backup, which, at least is a good move. But where are you at with this whole Eric Jackson situation, guy that they were hoping to be their steady left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary situation. I mean, like you said, it can be a life-threatening thing. And especially with this being, I'll say it, a reoccurring thing, like, they have to get down to the bottom of, like, why is this happening? Why is it happening multiple times? Because
is it football related?
Exactly. Is this an effort, energy kind of a thing?
Right.
Is this just who he is? And if that's the case, That's not healthy. I don't know if we should be, trying to push around 350-pound guys if we're throwing blood clots left and right.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see his timetable, because this could be cleared up in the preseason and he's ready to go, or he misses the entire season. We just don't know. And that's, like you said, that's why they brought in DJ Humphries, who's turned into a journeyman himself, but he's a serviceable offensive tackle.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He is serviceable, but obviously you would like Jackson to be there, not only to give you the little bit of the more potential, but to just more depth behind Humphries, right? Because again, injuries happen, as they know very well. So, I think it was smart for them to bring Humphries in, but obviously really just kind of hoping and praying that everything works out for Larry Jackson in his career. But definitely a scary, serious situation we wanted to kind of highlight, because they're starting left tackle. So, I mean, we'll kind of want something to monitor there, and really one of those that, like Derek said, I mean, it could be cleared next week. It could force him to retire, right? So this is a huge variability with this. All right, let's get into the fantasy realm here, talking about the fantasy football takeaways for these Los Angeles Rams. Anybody you want to highlight for this offense?
Give me Puka Nacua. Excuse me, Puka Nacua. Like today, tomorrow, Thursday, Saturday, Wednesday, it doesn't matter. Puka Nacua is a stud when he's on the field.
Yep. Yeah. Now, I mean, we're both super high on Puka Nacua. I don't.
He's an APR nightmare if you're going up against Puka Nacua. And last year he showed the toughness trying to come back from that PCL injury. Turned out to have a pretty damn good season.
Really.
and
impressive.
Sean McVay just likes to utilize him in so many different ways. From like jet sweep kind of things, throwing him in the backfield and having him run routes from there, in the slot, out wide. I mean, Puka is an absolute nightmare to try to cover.
Yeah, I mean, playing 11 games, one of those in the where he was a little bit obviously banged up. Almost 1,000 yards in 11 games is pretty incredible. So yeah, Puka Nacua, he's our wide receiver number 3 coming into the year. Which is a bit higher than most have him, but we do think that he's there's a chance. We saw what Cooper Kupp did in their Super Bowl run where he had the Triple Crown there. I mean, if Stafford likes a guy and he's got the connection, the sky's the limit. So obviously Puka Nacua that falls into that role,
especially when he's got a guy in Devontae Adams across from him.
Right, that's at least going to draw eyes, regardless of how old he is. The guy I want to talk about, though, outside another wide receiver, not Devonta, not Puka Nacua, but Mr. Tutu Atwell, the guy who was their 3rd leading receiver last year, and that was while competing with Demarcus Robinson for that wide receiver 3 role. They kind of both went back and forth. Demarcus Robinson is no longer there, and Tutu Atwell is. So I think he squarely is wide receiver 3, a guy who you basically can get for free. He's going super late if drafted at all. I think he's someone that can have a little bit of sweeper potential. Again, 500 plus yards, almost 600 yards when he was essentially splitting time with Demarcus Robinson. So, we got all our eyes on Puka and Devontae. He's a flyer. He's somebody that can boom or bust. Obviously, best ball is probably a little bit better of a situation for him because you may not know when he's going to have those 20-plus games. But Tutu Atwell is a guy I just want to throw out there as a little bit of a flyer who
and McVay likes to throw those wide receiver or those 3 wide receiver sets in all of the time. It'll be interesting to see if they change that up a little bit with them drafting Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon. But at the same time, like Sean McVay has gotten to the point thus far, why would he necessarily change what he's been successful with?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, he's definitely going to be the first guy, again, either coming off the bench or right in that wide receiver 3 set there. So I think he's going to just, I think he's a capable guy coming out of Louisville, but also he's going to benefit a little bit from what's around him. All right, let's get into the betting space, what we like to call the fun space here. So win total 9.5. A little bit, some juice to the over, around minus 145, and then the under, obviously getting some plus money there. Make playoffs between like 160, minus 172, depending on where you look. Miss playoffs, plus 140, plus 145. To win the NFC, as good as plus 195 over on DraftKings. To win the NFC West, that is. And then to win the conference at the NFC, as good as 11-1. And then Super Bowl, as nice as 22-1. FanDuel a little bit higher on them. They're a little bit reduced prices. DraftKings a little bit, thinking less of them, giving them some juicier prices there. So we will start there as always. Anything, futures as far as win total, playoff, Super Bowl, any of that stuff.
Yeah, give me their under
9.5. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just give me their under 9.5. I think this is the year that the wheels finally fall off for Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. And I just don't know, in division, Arizona, decent team. Seattle, they're a flyer, I'll say. And then we'll see what the Niners are coming off of their horrific season after a couple back-to-back NFC Championship games and a Super Bowl appearance. Right. So, I'm just still not sold on the LA Rams.
As your friend, and because if you're an LA Ram fan who was following us last year when I was high on them.
Oh, sorry, I forgot this point. They have a first seed schedule. They have the hardest schedule that they've seen for a while.
It's all right. Pressure creates diamonds, brother. So you are not backing away. I'm giving you one opportunity to take back your play, but you're full charge ahead.
Yeah, I think they get off to a perfect start. I think they just can't make up the ground.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sure.
Under 9.5 at plus 120.
I will be taking the defending NFC West champion Los Angeles Rams to repeat and be the NFC West champions again at a nice juicy plus 195 over at DraftKings there. I will also be taking this Rams team to win the NFC at 11-1. Again, I remind you, one play away from defeating the eventual Super Bowl champions and getting to that conference championship game. Look, I think they got the best quarterback in the division in Matthew Stafford. I think they have the best wide receivers in Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. I'm not going to say running back. Obviously, I think CMC has a higher potential than Kyren Williams, but he is a good running back there. And I think their defense is the best in the division. I think Seattle might give them a little bit of competition, but from what I saw from the young guys, near the end of the year, this is a team that they, finished the season extremely strong, took that right into the playoffs and made a little bit of noise there. So yeah, I'm not afraid of their schedule. I actually think their schedule works out fairly well. So give me the Rams, win the NFC at 11-1, and then again, of course, to win the NFC West at plus 195.
Okay.
All right, so no commentary there. What else do you got for anything else for this Rams team?
Well, yeah, I mentioned them getting off to a very poor start. Give me them to get 2 wins in their first 5 contests at plus 290. 2 wins.
You're crazy. All right,
so
walk us through it.
They have Houston coming to LA. I think that is a 50-50 shot there with CJ Stroud coming into town.
Yep.
Then they travel to Tennessee. I'll give them a win there. Then they have to travel to Philadelphia again. Last
Revenge
time they
game
there, didn't play very well. Then they have Indy and San Francisco coming to town in weeks 4 and week 5. So, like I said, Houston, I'll give them a loss there. Tennessee, I'll give them a win. But then Indy and San Francisco at home, they'll find a way to win one of those. But I do think that San Francisco will be a better squad than they had last year. But yeah, I think of their 3 games, I think they only win one of those. And yeah, I just think they'll only get 2.
Yeah, agree to disagree. I see 4-1 there pretty easily. But all right, we'll move it along there. Okay, so you're going 2 wins in the 5 at plus 290 over on Draft.
2 wins for at plus 290, and then I'll take a wild card with Kyren Williams if for some reason you're correct. Not to say that one of us was like way above 500 in our game picks last year and one wasn't, but
okay.
But Kyren Williams to lead the league in rushing yards, if they're going to go into those double-digit wins, it's going to be on the back of Kyren Williams. He ran for 1,300 yards last year at 25-1. I couldn't pass it up.
All right. Yep. All right. All right. Yep. Now back to my NFC West winning ways, as I predicted last year, very well in this division. But yeah, no, I'll go for a little bit of a flyer as well. I'll start with Puka Nakua. I think obviously Kyron can do his thing, but I think Puka is going to be the main lifeline of this team, of
Yeah.
this offense. So I'll give you the normal play of 1250 plus receiving yards at plus 110 over on Bet 365. And then my flyer here is for him to lead the NFL in receiving yards at 11-1.
Okay.
He had 1,400 yards his rookie season. He almost had 1,000 in just 11 games. Again, we talked about the Cooper Kupp situation in 2020 when Stafford has a guy. He has no issue throwing him the ball all the time, giving him opportunities. Puka Nacua, a guy who has huge potential after the catch. He's a very tough guy. I love Puka. I think the sky's the limit for him this year. This is probably irregardless of their record. Obviously, if he has great games, but you could talk about, okay, maybe they're behind, whatever. Like, he
Yep.
is going to be the number one option in this offense. And you talked about, I think Davante Adams brings a little bit more to the table than Cooper Kupp did last season. So yeah, I'm really high on Puka Nacua. I think the sky's the limit there. So give me the 1250 at plus 110, and then to lead the league in receiving yards at 11-1. All right, we are going to move on here to this last team. But before we do that, I got to tell you guys about some of our other amazing sponsors here. Look, one of the best parts of the offseason is the Fantasy Football Expo. And it is under a month away, the 2025 Fantasy Football Expo over in beautiful Canton, Ohio, from August 8th through the 10th there. Get your tickets today at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. Speaking of fantasy, when you're drafting fantasy, you want to go over to Fast Draft Fantasy to draft those teams. It's a best ball format. And look, one of the worst parts of fantasy football is waiting for all these other slowpokes to draft their teams. You know the guys that you want to target. So do it fast. 20-second rounds there over on Fast Draft Fantasy. No drafts will last longer than 10 minutes, and we'll make the deal a little bit sweeter. Download Fast Draft Fantasy, use promo code plus Degen Doc, all caps, all one word, and get a deposit match up to $50 today. Moving along to the San Francisco 49ers, a team with so much expectation last season. Everybody was projecting them to be so high and mighty. Well, maybe not everybody, because coming in at 6-11, they not only cashed their under, but they cashed a nice, beautiful under 9.5 at plus 350 for me last season. So thank you, San Francisco. But alas, we look forward to the 2025 season coming off that 6-11. Their win totals back up to 10.5 there. So projecting them to kind of find their winning ways again are the books. Got the 49ers here. Going to go through their free agency moves as we do with every team here, talking losses and additions. There is a lot for this one. So let's take a breath and get right into it here. Jordan Mason is in Minnesota. Elijah Mitchell now at the Chiefs, trading away some running backs with Christian McCaffrey. That's interesting. Deebo Samuel now with Washington. Guard Aaron Banks is with the Packers. Other starting guard Feliciano is retired. Leonard Floyd now with the Falcons. Greenlaw and Hufanga have went on to the Broncos. Javon Hargrave's gone. Travarius Ward's gone. Rock Ya-Sin, Tayshaun Gibson, punter Mitch Wisnowski. Seems like they have made a huge turnover there. Obviously, having to pay some of those guys, as in Brock Purdy, figuring out that cap space there. And then the guys they brought in. Talked about Demarcus Robinson coming over from division rival Rams. Bryce Huff, who was a massive disappointment for the Eagles. Maybe he can get back to his ways. The rookie Michael Williams out of Georgia. Other rookie Alfred Collins out of Texas. Luke Gifford coming over. A couple safeties, kicker Greg Joseph, and cornerback Trey Brown from the Seattle Seahawks. So, my friend, a lot of changeover, a lot of turnover here. What are we thinking? Is this a net positive, net negative? What are you thinking for dare I say, your San Francisco 49ers, the way you defend them.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start backing the Denver 49ers according to the losses. You know, when you lose Greenlaw and Hufanga, and obviously they went to Denver, their defense is going to look way different this year compared to what we're used to seeing. And like you kind of mentioned, it's interesting that they let Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell walk with CMC issues that he had last year. And then offensive line wise, you had a couple guys move on to retirement or to a different team. This is not the same San Francisco 49ers that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years with Brock Purdy playing on that rookie deal. They paid him, they paid Kittle, they paid somebody else. I can't remember. Anyways,
it was Warner. Yeah, I think
it was Warner. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, time came to pay some guys. And because of that, they had to get rid of a shit ton of guys too. Additions wise, they didn't bring in a ton of household names to replace those guys. I mean, like you said, Bryce Huff had a couple really good years with New York, but he was a big time disappointment in Philadelphia. But the Mac Daddy is going to the Bay. So we got that going for us. I don't know about the moves that the 49ers made and how they're going to necessarily equate to, getting them back to NFC championship games and Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit on this, but it's the question marks on the different line of scrimmages, right? The offensive line. I mean, Trent Williams is a beast, sure, but he's had his own injury issues, and he's 36. So, we've seen quarterbacks play that late, but left tackle's, quite the athletic position. So we'll see.
And especially with tackles, it seems like they're good, and then they just drop off a cliff all of a sudden. Where quarterbacks, you see that drop off more gradual.
Right, exactly. And then, other than that, there's a lot of unproven there. Brendel, Barch, Puny, McKivicks, like a lot of younger, kind of unproven guys. They really haven't had the best offensive line the past couple of years outside of Williams there. So interesting that they basically left that situation alone. Now, they did try to address the defensive line. Obviously, you have Bosa there, but bringing in guys like Alfred Collins, Michael Williams, but still a lot of unproven names on that defensive side of the ball other than Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. So a lot to talk about. And then the big question for especially our fantasy folks, which, we'll get right into. What's Christian McCaffrey going to look like health-wise? I mean, it was very well documented. The Achilles, what they call it, a calf strain, complete liars. Can't believe they got away with that. Complete lie. A calf strain and Achilles tendonitis, or even an Achilles like tendinosis, that is completely different. So eventually it came out that it was on both. He had Achilles tendonitis on both. Like, that is talking about degradation of that Achilles tendon. That is not something that just kind of goes away, takes a while. And then he had ACL sprain when he came back. He was actually looking pretty good. And in that game in the snow, he landed hard on his PCL. So what are your expectations for Christian McCaffrey coming into this 2025 NFL season?
Yeah, I think he's going to bounce back. Now, I think he's going to bounce back to the point where he was the last time we saw him in a full season, carrying the rock 400 times for, I can't remember, like 1,700 yards and almost 1,000 through the air. It's just, I don't know if that's going to be the CMC that we see. But I do think he gets back to the point where, he's a top 8-10 back in the league. He's gonna be a dude, but I don't think he's gonna be the star that he once was.
Are you drafting him in the first round?
No.
Yes, neither am I. Okay.
No. I wanted to just like end of 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, so we're probably not going to be getting a lot of Christian where he's going, right? Because he's finding his way back up in there. I think it's kind of two sides of the argument, right? You kind of hit on both. One is, well, he didn't come off, a 400 touch a year, so he should be relatively, fresh in that regard, right? And then the other side of it is, well, he had a, kind of a longer term injury with Achilles tendonitis on the both sides there. And then when he tried to come back, he immediately walked himself into another injury. So now we're talking about coming off those 2 injuries, which, alone may not really be major to affect next season.
Yeah.
but he's getting up there. I mean, again, the number one predictor for an injury is a previous injury to that body part.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're going. Again, I don't want to go doomsday as well. I'm not going to say that I think he's going to have a decent year as well,
Yeah.
but I don't think he's worth, the RB I've seen him as high as 3 to 5 where he's
Yeah.
going, right? I'm
Yeah.
not taking
Like I
him in
said,
the
I'm
first
thinking
round.
like 8 to 10 range. I don't necessarily think that
Right.
he's going to be back to, you know, 2,000 all-purpose yards. He's going to be 13 to 1,500
Right.
maybe.
Yeah, coming in at 29. So he's not old, but he's not young for a running back. So
Right.
that mileage is still there.
Yep.
All right, talking about another major injury, they've got a couple guys that are beat up. Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall dealing with some things.
Sure.
A couple guys in their secondary. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. That's stuff that should be minor, at least right now. Not a lot of alarms. But a major injury is Brandon Ayuk coming off that ACL tear. On October the 20th against the Chiefs. Typically a 10 to 12 month injury. He's going to have just around 10 months by week 1.
Yep.
What are we thinking for Ayuk? Is he even going to be starting week 1? Do we think this is a pup situation? Where are you at with Brandon Ayuk at this point?
I don't know if it'll be a pup situation. I don't know if he'll be starting week 1. All I will say is the first 6-8 weeks, I'm not expecting much from Brandon Ayuk.
Mm-hmm.
Timeline wise, he's there, sort of, but that's still pretty rushed. When we're thinking about ACL tears, two of those months, he's trying to learn how to walk normally again.
Right.
It's just one of those things that these guys don't feel like they can trust their knee until 16, 8, 24 months a lot of times. So
Right.
expecting him to bounce back in 10 months and be the Brandon Ayuk that they were hoping for last year, I have some major hesitation there.
I'm right there with you. And I think, there's reporting is a little bit tough on this because it's always hard to know exactly. But based
Right.
on some of his tweets, it sounded like the MCL might have been involved as well. And
Yep.
anytime you add any type of multi-ligament injury,
Multi-ligament.
that
Yep.
just adds to the complexity of that rehab that Derek was kind of talking about. So, there's that situation. There's a situation of, unless a guy's going to have like at least 11 plus months of recovery, I'm mostly going to be fading them the first part of the year. Like,
Yep.
I think there is a really good chance, more likely than not, Ayuk starts on the pup. We'll get this kind of,
Yeah.
it'll clear out once we get to training camp and we start to see where he's at. Of course, you're
For
going to
sure.
hear he's ahead of schedule.
Yep.
Everybody and their mother's ahead of schedule in the offseason before anybody can actually see anybody, right?
Yep.
So I think it's a point that no one really, sucked their teeth into Ayuk to go get him in the
Sure.
offseason. There was the trade rumors and stuff. So I think he tweeted out basically like they were trying to trade me and I couldn't even walk, and it was like a month after the surgery or something like
Right.
that, right? So I that's an interesting tweet to put out there, and I don't think that's most very bullish for this next season.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were mentioning, I think first half of the season, first 6 to 8 weeks, you can't expect a lot there. So I know there's a guy that you like in the situation coming out of that, with no Ayuk expected there. Is there someone
Yeah.
you're expecting to step up, in that place?
Yeah. I mean, really, there's a few, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey, they're going to have to rely on him a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
They still have George Kittle there, who's an absolute stud.
Love
But
Kittle here.
also, I mean, you got Juwan Jennings. He had some minor injuries last year that kept him out of a couple of games, but
Sure.
he's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
In his first, I'll say, full season. So I really expect him to do something. But Demarcus Robinson's kind of sneaky as well, coming over
Right.
from the LA Rams. Definitely mark it down when the Niners play the Rams for this coming year for a little
Yep.
bit of a bounce back spot.
Yeah, no, Demarcus Robinson's the guy I wanted to talk about. George Kittle, love him. He's going to be consistent. He's going to have to be a main target for them. He was
Yep.
a leading receiver last year. I would not be surprised if he is again this season. But Demarcus
Yep.
Robinson is that sneaky guy. Just like I talked about Tutu Atwell. Again, a guy who had
Sure.
7 touchdowns last year in Demarcus Robinson, almost 500 yards. He can
Yeah.
find the end zone. Ayuk's going to be out for at least a couple, if not, the majority of the first half of the season. I think Demarcus Robinson is going to have a nice role in this offense. He's someone that, Purdy's going to be able to throw a couple deep shots too and kind of spread out the offense there. Juwan Jennings, it's going to be interesting to see him in kind of that wide receiver 1 role. But, man, he had some spike games. He looked good, like you
I mean,
said.
I think he played most, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of the season in that wide receiver one with Debo
Yeah,
having his issues and Brandon Ayuk going down pretty
absolutely.
early.
You can absolutely make that argument. I'd love to see, as a Florida guy, Ricky
Yeah.
Pearsall be able to get healthy and do
And he
some
had a
things. But
couple pretty solid games at the end of the season too.
yeah, I just think he's a little. I'd almost rather go to Marcus Robinson at a way cheaper price.
Yeah.
Someone know what he's talking about. Because I think they might have similar stat lines by the end of the year. But obviously, Pearsall probably brings you a little bit more PPR potential.
Yes.
But I think the price as far as where it should be, Robinson's is a bit low. All right, let's move on to the betting side of things here. Again, talked about this win total, only winning 6 games, but having a win total of 10.5. Pretty even each way, a little bit depending on where you're getting it. To make the playoffs, they're anywhere from minus 185 to minus 200. To miss the playoffs, they're plus 150 to 165-ish. Division, to win the NFC West, they are the favorites, coming in at either plus 165 on FanDuel or plus 150 on DraftKings. To win the NFC, anywhere as low as plus 650 on ESPN Bet, which
Wow.
is kind of crazy, but also as high as 10 to 1. And then to win the Super Bowl, everyone's kind of got them around that 20 to 1 mark there. So I'll start with you, my friend. Anything win total futures wise?
In total, I'm staying completely away from miss playoffs, make playoffs. I'm staying away from that. I mean, going whatever they were 6-11 last year.
Right.
And then, like we had kind of mentioned, I'm not a big fan of some of the moves that they've made in the offseason. Obviously, you got to pay the dudes that are absolute studs in
Right.
Kittle and Warner and Purdy. But in doing that, you lost a lot. So are they going to jump up to 9, 10, 11 wins to make it into the playoffs or to go above that 10.5 win? I'm pretty hesitant, but I could also see it happening and having them or see them having a rebound season.
Yeah, I'm diving in. I'm going under 10.5 wins. I don't think this team is 5 wins better than last season.
Yeah.
I just think that's a huge stretch. I understand Christian McCaffrey went down and Debo had his issue and Ayuk, whatever.
Sure.
But Debo's gone. Ayuk's still going to be injured. And Christian McCaffrey, like, yes, he should be there, but exactly when is? I mean, at this point, I want to say, like, when's he going to go again? Or I don't think we're going to get the same MVP candidate CMC. Yeah. So I talked about the offensive line concerns. Trent Williams, behind him is Andrew Dillard, a guy who has been a career journeyman at 36 years old. I have question marks there. I have question marks on the rest of the offensive line and the defense. Really, the entirety of the defense outside of Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. They may have some guys that are going to pop off and hit like Michael Williams, or we could have a situation where this defense is really bad again. I look at this secondary and I see guys, Lenore is a decent player, but Renardo Green, Upton Stout, Malik Mustafa, Jair Brown, young guys, rookies or second-year guys. Like, it's a lot to rely on, a lot of unproven real estate out there. So give me the under 10.5 wins at minus 115 over at FanDuel. And then give me the alt under 8.5 wins at plus 255. Believe that's at DraftKings there. And I will also take them to miss the playoffs at plus 150.
Sure.
So I'm loading up on the unders. It worked for me last year. As far as this team, I'm a little bit confused. Like, I don't even know if I can definitively say they're a better team than last year coming into this season, but their win total is still, 5 wins better. I understand the schedule might be easier, but right now between them and Seattle, I think they're the 2 worst teams in the division. So, I'm gonna be playing the all unders and the miss the playoffs there. All right, what kind of player stuff you got for these 49ers?
Yeah, give me a couple. Juwan Jennings, talked about him a little bit, but his over 850.5 receiving yards at minus 110. Last year in 15 games, he had 77 catches for 975 yards.
Yeah.
His role has only grown with Ayuk coming back from injury. Obviously, you don't have Deebo Samuel there anymore. I expect similar numbers this year as last year. So I just think 850 is just entirely too low.
Right.
And then give me Christian McCaffrey to return to 1,000 yards rushing at plus 110. Like I said, I'm not expecting him to go for 1,200, 1,500 yards, but I do think he cracks that 1,000-yard mark. And a little bit of plus money at plus 110, I'll take it.
Yeah, even being low on this team, I like both of those. Juwan Jennings is, likely going to be the wide receiver one, at least for a decent part of the year. McCaffrey, again, I think he's going to be able to play at least double-digit games, and he's definitely a guy that can. You're going to need him. I mean, he's going to get 25, 30 touches because they're going to need him. Right. Another guy I think they're going to need is George Kittle. And I'm going to be taking him over 1,000 receiving yards at plus 135. He's a guy who's done this in back-to-back years. And he led the team. He got over this. He had 1,100 yards in just 15 games last season. He led the team in receiving yards. I wouldn't be shocked if he does it again. They don't have that much outside of CMC and George Kittle. We talked about Juwan Jennings being a nice piece, but the focal points are going to be George Kittle through the air, George Kittle blocking for CMC, right? I think that's really where this offense is going to have to be around. He's got some good chemistry with Purdy. I think, we're hitting on the three guys that everything's going to have to flow through for this team.
For sure.
All right, brother. We've done it. We've done another division preview there. The NFC West wrapped up, ready to go. Tie a bow on it. Anything else for the good people before we get on out of here?
No, I mean, we're going to keep doing these division preview episodes, so hopefully we'll get around to, maybe the AFC North one of these days, so I can talk about my Steelers a little bit more.
Yes, one thing is guaranteed. We will be talking about your favorite team here within the next couple of weeks. The goal is to get all these out before the Hall of Fame game so you can kind of have an idea before – because that's when a lot of people start getting into the betting markets once they actually start seeing football on their screen. So you want to get these bets in sooner than later. Most of the time it does.
These prices start really moving around,
especially the player stuff. That stuff is the one that will probably move the most before the season. But if you like something, if you agree with us, or maybe you hate it and you want to go the other way, the advice is to get on it now. Like Derek said, we're going to continue on with these division previews. Continue rolling here and just drop right into the season. We'll be doing some college stuff this year, but start getting the gears ready. Start getting your tolerance up for football because it's all football all the time here. We appreciate any support, especially if you made it through. These are definitely going to be our longer episodes, these division previews, right? We usually will not have this long of an episode. So if you've made it this far, cheers to you. Thank you for being a football fan. Give us a like, comment, show us some love as a newer channel. We're really hoping to break
YouTube
that
and all the things. Yep,
all the things, man. We're hoping to get that 1,000 subscribers. Love to get it before the season kicks off and really get this train rolling. So, hey, folks, we appreciate you very much. From Professor Locks and the Degen Docs here at IDP Plus Bets, we are out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.